Courtney,
Sure.
already? Okay. Remember, our after-meeting meeting is at, will be immediately after the meeting at the Cambridge Brewery. And normally we'd like to get a head count so we know how many seats that usually we can I've converged on them after the meeting that we had Linus. And we converged on them, and they were crowded. And it took myself, Mad Dog, John, and Linus to get ourselves a table. It was an interesting group.
We did a pretty good crowd that day.
Yeah. So we did catch it. And I called ahead. So anyway, the Cambridge Brewery is just up on Hampshire Street, just a couple blocks away from here. And several of the people in the leadership of this group drink only Coke or something else like that. I'll drink a wine. It's amazing. This group is not big drinkers. We don't go through a lot of pictures here. I don't know, with the Metro West group here.
We do.
Might have to pay in advance. Anyhow, let me. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Courtney Eckhardt. Courtney is going to be talking about Postfix, which is an alternative to SendMail as a mail transport agent, or MTA. Not it's very relevant here for those of us who grew up in Boston with the MTA. And became Charlie's at various times. We just cut over to a new server. The old Boston Linux server is sitting right here, getting cannibalized by John, and the case is going to Randy Hoffland, who should be showing up shortly. So, and in converting over, we brought up Red Hat 7.1 with Postfix, and we're using Mailman as our list manager. We still have the passion.
Sorry.
We haven't figured a way to transport John up to Belmont. There's a place up in Belmont called McLean's. So, anyway, at that lousy joke, I'll turn the meeting over to Courtney. We also have some O'Reilly direct catalogs here. Feel free to take them.
Dim the light a little bit so we can see the screen a bit better.
Sure.
Or doesn't normally.
That's good. No. That's good. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, what did you use to do the slides?
Was that?
What did you use to do the slides?
Star Office.
Yeah, stand back.
Yeah, it's one of theirs. It was the one that looked least tacky.
That works.
Something that looked, sort of soothing. Okay, so I'm Courtney, as I mentioned, and I have tried to put the presentation in order of sort of practical things first and theoretical internals of the software later. I can go into greater or lesser depth in configuration and internals and whatever people here like. Speak up if you have a question at any point. And we come to the end and there's extra time. Tell me what you're interested in and I'll try and cover that some more. Okay, why would you like to use Postfix? Besides the fact that I tell you to. It's fast. It can serve on a desktop PC, and when this was written, this was probably written a year or so ago, so let's say a Pentium 400. It can serve about 1 million different messages a day. That's distinct, which is pretty spiffy. It's pretty secure. It takes a leaf from Qmail in not having a single executable like SendMail does, but having lots of little executables that are semi-transient. and will do one specific task a configurable number of times and then exit and start the instance. It's mail compatible from the outside for the most part. Your users should not see a huge difference between Postfix and mail, and therefore probably Postfix and Gmail. It's easier to use than SendMail. You don't have to deal with the ugly sendmail.cf. It's much faster to configure. It has better documentation than Qmail does. Qmail's documentation is miserable. There's lots of things that tell you what to do to set up your Qmail server, and very few that tell you why you should do it that way. So, it was written by this fellow, whose name I can't quite say right, because it has sounds that are not used in English, which is my native language. If you're interested in hearing how to say his name, he has a WAV file that you can download from his website, which is him saying his name. It was developed by him while he was on sabbatical with IBM. In 1998.
Where did this guy from?
I think, I'm guessing Polish, but I'm not sure.
No, I think it's German.
German? Okay.
Yeah. It could be Austrian.
Go to his website.
Yeah, listen to what he says on his website. There's a link to it from postfix.org, which is the Postfix site. It was released as free software in 1998 as the secure mailer. IBM was originally going to call it Mailer, but found that that was too close to a currently registered trademark. So they named it Secure Mailer initially and then renamed it to Postfix. I have not found any documentation about how they chose the name Postfix. It's released under the Secure Mailer license, which is also known as the IBM Public License. This is free software. GNU says so. I think it's copyleft, but you know, I don't really understand the license, so don't quote me. It is not compatible with the GPL for purposes of merging code because it in fact requires that you give more rights away than the GPL requires. There are some patent rights tied up with the IBM public license the GPL does not address. So general information on how you get it and what you can do with it. It runs on nearly any Unix your little heart desires, especially if it's the more modern version, but older versions probably do. It runs on Linux. It does not run on Windows. People have been making noises about porting it to Windows. And the maintainer is very, very doubtful about this.
Why would anyone want Postfix running on Windows when you have such a great mailing system like Exchange?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe because Postfix is cheaper.
We're missing all those important features like the blue screen.
I don't know, man. What are you going to do?
He's not certain about it.
It still sounds like why we want it on Windows. You have a Linux box.
I don't know why you would want it on Windows. The maintainer doesn't think you'd want it on Windows either. But you know, I'm not sure about that. I think we should send an email and they can look into it. It is distributed as source at postfix.org. If you want binaries, I recommend you look at your local distribution. Red Hat has some. I think Red Hat and SUSE have the most current binaries. Debian's for stable are somewhat out of date but still usable. I'm not sure what testing looks like right now.
So one thing I'd like to throw in here, when I was setting up the new boot.org server, I installed the RPM packages from Red Hat for Postfix, and it just wouldn't work. And I eventually gave up and installed the source, and it worked right out of the box with everything else.
Okay, I have not installed it from binaries. I installed it from source. There is, in fact, an entire Red Hat back on how you make Red Hat work with Postfix. And I have not read that because I don't run Red Hat, so I don't think it was very useful. But as I go further, maybe you'll be able to understand what went wrong. I'm not sure.
I think the RPM was just more of a file, right?
That seems entirely possible.
It seems I've found that things that you've had problems with under Red Hat, I've been able to install under SUSE with absolutely no problem. I think there's a little difference. I think even though Red Hat's more popular, I think SUSE tends to be a little bit more stable.
Vegan stage is very super popular. At least I tried my common. You can just apt get, update, install, and I grade everything every night.
It's my favorite distribution.
Yeah.
The more Charlie's So, some of the things that you need to do with Postfix that you may not need to do for other things. It's sort of like Apache this way. It wants its own user. This should not be a user that you can log in as. It just should be a user that has very few privileges, so that if somebody does do something after your Postfix system somehow, there's very little that Postfix can slash. So, it's just an example of mine. Make sure that the user Postfix is alias to root, which is hopefully alias to a real person, so if something goes wrong, you get some mail. Move the sendmail binary, the new aliases binary, and mailq binary to backup versions. And the reason to do this is so that you can run your Postfix installation but still have the old binaries there, so you can do things like clear your queue and make sure there's nothing stuck under your old system before you ever move it. If you do that, however, and you installed sendmail or qmail or whatever you've got right there right now, from binaries, you might have problems because the packaging system might complain that it can't remove the original binaries. You might have to remove the binary. So, there is a little security issue that you should decide before you go to the actual installation. Postfix uses a mail drop directory, which local mail is posted directly to. The sendmail binary from Postfix takes mail from your mail program and dumps it in the mail drop directory so that the other parts of Postfix can deal with it. You can have this world readable or world writable. I'm sorry. Yes, I did not correct that. World writable or group owned. If you have it group owned, then part of Postfix needs to be set GID. Now, the maintainer of Postfix thinks this is a really, really, really bad idea. So by default, the mail drop directory is world writable. This does allow users to do some potentially obnoxious stuff, but there should be very little they can do that could actually crash the system or crash Postfix or cause junk mail to be delivered to cause your pine building on the floor. There's a very, very small chance that any piece of random garbage dumped in the mailbox, the mail drop directory will be recognized by Postfix as an actual legitimate Q file. Because the format is very, very specific and the data is not trusted. So if you leave it world readable, then you don't have to use set GID stuff, which means that if something happens to your Postfix installation, you will probably have more security against the rest of your hard drive being corrupted. But if you have a lot of users, you may wish to use the set GID. Make sure that you create a special group that shares its group ID with no other groups and no other users for the purpose. The source comes with a script, install.sh. It asks you some questions, answer the questions. The defaults are fairly sensible and are somewhat architecture dependent. If there's interest and we have time, I can run it in a dummy, as a user, so you can see what it asks. At least for Linux, the default is to use user sbin sendmail. However, there are some programs that want user lib sendmail. So you should probably make sure that either one of those two is binary and the other of those two is assembling to the binary. I found out that mail on my system was not working because there was no user lib sendmail after I installed Postfix. So you learned when one could not spam me with 1,000 messages about how I now owed the tax service money.